Hey everybody, it's John with Freshwater Systems. Today's video we're going to talk about installing a NeoPure Pro 4 Series reverse osmosis system. My friend Richard is going to take us through the steps of installing and getting this system ready. The first step is to unpack the components and make sure you've got everything in your installation kit. The box is going to include a manifold and tank, and the installation kit, which includes tubing, a feed supply valve, a tank valve, a drain saddle, and a faucet adapter. There's a housing wrench and a sanitizing kit for the tank. Plus, you're going to need some tools. You don't need a lot. You're going to need an adjustable wrench, a Phillips head screwdriver. You're going to need a tire gauge to check your tank pressure. You're going to need a tubing cutter to make great cuts in the tubing, and a 3/8 drill with a 7/16 inch bit. To get started with our install, we're going to locate the primary components of the reverse osmosis system under the sink. Depending upon the configuration of your sink, you may find these components need to go in different spots, where your disposal is, where you have other stuff. But the idea here is to find the most convenient location for the components. Now we're going to install the feed line adapter valve. So first, locate the cold water supply to your faucet and turn that angle stop valve to the off position. With an adjustable wrench, loosen and remove the riser that feeds your cold water side of the faucet. Once removed, install the feed supply adapter to the top of the angle stop valve. Once installed, reinstall the riser tube to the top of the feed supply adapter. Make sure that the valve is in the off position, which is perpendicular to the tube. Now install the feed supply line that will go to the reverse osmosis system. The faucet base is going to install on a pre-drilled hole or a hole that you've contracted to have done on your sink top. The tip here is to attach the tubing to the faucet that's got 3 connections: your water connection, the air gap, and the return of the air gap to the drain connection. But if you attach those to your faucet first, the rest of the installation goes much easier. Since it's hard to show this from underneath the sink, we've pulled the faucet out to show you the 3 main components. One is the slotted washer, which slides right up underneath the faucet. Then the spacer cinches that slotted washer up against the bottom of the sink so that it holds it in place, and that's held in place by the washer and the nut below. Now we're going to install the drain saddle. This is how the water from the RO coming from the air gap gets into the drain line. The drain saddle is assembled onto the tailpiece of your sink drain. Mark the spot where you're going to drill. And keep in mind that the location of this saddle is very important, as the tube from your air gap connection has to be just as straight as possible, because only gravity carries the water from the air gap to your drain connection. Once you've marked the pipe, drill a hole. Once your hole is drilled, put your saddle together on the tailpiece and use a pencil to orient the opening in the saddle to the hole that's just been drilled. Then with a Phillips screwdriver, tighten up the clamp so that it is tight and secure on the drain line tailpiece. So once the drain saddle is installed, if possible, many tailpieces will allow you to rotate it so that it's more in line with where your tubing is coming from the air gap faucet. Measure and trim that tube so when you insert it into the drain saddle, the line running from the gap is as straight as possible. An optional way to hook the drain line from the reverse osmosis air gap is by using the dishwasher connection to your disposer. And the kit includes the Y adapter, a union connector for your RO drain line, 2 worm gear clamps, and a piece of hose to couple it to the disposer. The first step is to remove the dishwasher line from the disposer. Next, slide the coupling piece onto that barbed connection of the disposer. And go ahead and attach the clamp on the disposer side. Now insert the Y adapter so that the big part is facing the disposer and the Y is pointing upwards towards your RO air gap drain line. Then reattach the line from your dishwasher to the opposite end of the Y connector. Then using the union connector, we're going to attach the drain line from the RO air gap. Now let's prepare the tank for installation. With Teflon tape, put a few wraps on the threads on the top of the tank, and then thread on the tank valve. The valve should only go hand tight, but if you want to put a wrench to it, be very careful. Okay, the next thing we do once we've put the valve on is to check the air pressure in the tank. On the side of the tank is a little cap that covers the Schrader valve. These storage tanks have a pre-charge that should be between 5 and 7 psi. And with your air pressure gauge, make sure that that tank pressure is at the right spot before we start using it. Before we hook it up to our reverse osmosis system, let's install the fittings that's going to allow us to sanitize the tank every time we maintain the system. Now that we've assembled the tank valve and the tubing that's going to go back to our RO, we're going to install the quick connect fittings to enable us to sanitize the tank first at install, and then every time we change the membrane. It's a good idea to sanitize the tank, and these fittings make it so much easier. Begin by cutting the tubing in a spot that's going to be very easy to connect the feed line with our tank line. These quick connect fittings use a compressionless tube fitting. On the end of the fitting is a barb that you push up into the tube, and then it's held in place by the nut. Now that the fittings are installed, we're going to reconnect it so that the feed supply connects to our tank line. But before we connect it, we're going to insert our sanitizing solution. Now that this is connected, we're going to turn on the feed valve to fill the tank and our sanitizing solution. Okay, let's now prepare our manifold for installation. First, we're going to remove the housings to make sure that each has a carbon filter in it and that the shrink wrap has been removed. Leave the pre-filter carbon in the housing and reapply it. We're going to leave the post-carbon out so that we can flush sanitizer from the tank straight through to the faucet without going through the carbon filter. Next, we're going to assemble the fitting for our post-filter outlet to the faucet. Apply a few wraps of Teflon tape to the male stem adapter to the housing outlet. Once hand tight, we're going to give it another half turn with our adjustable wrench. Now we're going to apply the elbow. Make sure the elbow goes on all the way to the fitting. That way we know we've installed the stem the whole way. Now let's start attaching tubing. The red brine line attaches to the brine outlet on the permeate pump. Next, our tank line attaches to the T on the back of the housing for the post filter. Then our faucet connection attaches to the elbow we just installed. And finally, the feed line attaches to the elbow at the front of the unit. And it's a good idea to leave the extra tubing so when it's time to change filters, we can pull the manifold into place and easily get to the housings for the filters. Now that all the tube connections are done, we want to flush the sanitizing solution out of the storage tank before we do anything else. Keep in mind, when we flushed our sanitizer out of the tank, this housing is now going to be full of water. So dump that in the sink. Now that we've flushed our sanitizer out of the tank, let's put our carbon filter back in the unit. It's okay to use a wrench to tighten the housing, but don't over tighten it. Over tightening the housing could affect the O-ring and cause it to leak. Now with the RO on the base cabinet floor, it might be a good idea to attach it to the side of the cabinet just to secure it. So now let's turn our water on. First, turn on the angle stop valve and then slowly open the feed supply adapter valve and allow the system to pressurize. Give it a few minutes and then check all the fittings for leaks. Once you're leak-free and comfortable that this system is good to go, let the tank fill and then drain the tank 2 or 3 times. This makes sure that all of the components have been adequately flushed and you're good to go. Well, that's it. We hope you got something out of it and found it helpful. If you have questions, give us a call and let us know. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check us out on freshwatersystems.com.